Okay, look at this equation. See if it makes sense to you. Miles per hour plus hours equals to miles. Does that make any sense? I hope not. What's the problem here? For example, if you're driving 60 miles an hour and for 3 hours, would you take 60 miles per hour and add 3 hours and get, what would you get? You wouldn't get anything that makes sense, would you? The problem here is that this is a mismatch of units. And we talked about that, and one thing I really hope you get out of this course, and I have very strong feelings on this, is an appreciation for units and how they work when you apply equations in math. And I've said this before, most mistakes I ever see, and when people solve word problems, are mistakes of this nature. And you know why they make them? It's because they're not writing these units down. So if you pay no attention to the units, if you just put X's and numbers, and then there's always a very good chance that you can screw up the units. And this is utter nonsense. There's no way it can work. But again, if you don't write those units in, you wouldn't know, would you? You'd be living in ignorance. All right, so I want to always make a big deal of this. And another reason I have to make a big deal of it, because you probably haven't been taught this before. And particularly if you came into this course from high school. So teachers normally don't talk, math people generally don't talk about units. And but it's a shame because they're powerful. They drive how we solve applications. All right, well, with that in mind, I want to discourage you from a typical textbook approach, like your course textbook uses, and think about applying units to solving these word problems. If you want to, if you always had problems with word problems, then, all right, how about opening your mind and thinking a little differently here? Bear with me then on all this. What does miles per hour mean? Or what is speed? There's an equation which textbooks always give, algebra textbooks. It's d equals to RT. All right? And what does that mean? D stands for distance. R means rate of speed. Why don't they just call that speed? If you got caught speeding by the cop and you ask, well, officer, how fast was I going? He's not going to say, well, your rate of speed was 68 miles per hour in this 55 mile an hour zone. It's going to say your speed was 68. So anyway, textbooks use R for rate of speed. T means time. But where does that come from? And I hope you don't go through your math life just accepting this stuff at face value and not making any effort to understand what it means. Let's talk about this. Speed, how do we calculate speed? If I walk from one side of the room to the other, suppose that's 9 feet to that wall over there, which you can't see on this camera. And if it takes me, I'll go real slow here. Suppose it takes me 4 seconds to travel 9 feet. All right, well, how fast was I going? I traveled 9 feet in 4 seconds. Very slow. And this is literally 9/4 feet per second, or 2 1/4 feet per second. All right, so does that sound like a measurement of speed to you? If you drove 300 miles in 6 hours, how fast were you going? 300 miles in 6 hours would be, divide this, you get 50 miles per hour. Oops, that's per hour singular, not plural. 50 miles per hour. So we measure speed by taking distance and dividing it by time. So speed is distance divided by time. So that's a definition for speed, typically how we do it. You could use any kind of units there, as long as there's distance and time. You could measure speed in furlongs per fortnights. Furlong is a antiquated measure of distance, and a fortnight is a span of 2 weeks. You can measure distance, speed that way. It'll be kind of strange. But the definition of speed equal to distance divided by time, this is what gives us that little formula. Because if we clear the fractions by multiplying everything by time, then over here, time cancels, leaving distance by itself. So I have distance equals to, and multiply here, I've got speed times time. So this is what turns into the D equals RT formula. Distance is rate of speed times time. So that's where that comes from. And if you want to be educated, then you want to begin to understand where this stuff comes from. Don't just let people hand you formulas that are mindless without trying to understand them. Is that real learning? So that's where it comes from. Now, next we're going to apply it.